Good evening, everybody. I guess you know the drill by now. Welcome to Where Are They Now? Tuesday nights, prime time on Discover TV. Every week, I talk to legendary South African artists and people in the music business, local, international, ask them to share their journey with me, how they contributed, how they've continued to either stay in the industry or move to a different phase of their lives. Most importantly, where are they now? So we want to hear the crazy stories, the incredible people that they've met, the amazing experiences, everything in between. Tonight's guest, wow, she is a formidable force in the literary world, encompassing music journalism, fashion, life stories, styling, script writing, and so much more in between. We are going to talk like crazy tonight, let me tell you. My dear friend from so long ago, I'm so happy to have in the studio tonight, Suzanne Brenner.
Hey,
Woohoo!
it's lovely being here. I've been so looking forward to talking to you.
I'm so happy you have. I've been looking forward to talking to you firstly, because we go way back, and I've been lucky to have been in an industry where you've been very prominent. So if I want to talk, I usually like to go back to the beginning and stuff like that, but tonight I just want to go different. I want to ask you a question right here, right now in your life. If you looked back from here, what would you say about your journey? Have you done what you wanted to do? Are you still doing what you want to do? Where are you in your life right now?
That's an interesting question.
It's scary, eh?
So many things I wanted to do, and
Yes.
I had such a load of fun. It's not all that surprising that my highlights are probably when I was in charge.
Of course. Surprise.
So I'm still doing what I want to do because I'm in charge of my writing company. But all along the
Exactly.
way, it has been the highlights have been making the most of things where I'm telling other people what to do.
Okay. Well, I don't think that's really like a narcissistic thing in any possible way. I think in your kind of business, somebody has to be in charge. You know, if you've got like 20 writers on an article, it's going to be berserk. Somebody eventually has to say, this is what it's going to be.
Cindy,
So I
I've got
guess
to interrupt you a minute. Can you hear feedback from another part of the house? Let me close the door.
Okay, sure. Absolutely. So, in case you don't know, Suzanne was a journalist from way back in the day. I've already mentioned that. Let's go. Okay, so now we can go right back. You were a Durban girl.
Definitely, yes.
Yes.
Durban girl, we went to the beach, went to sessions, loved music.
Right.
Yeah, we had, it was fun growing up on the coast. I'm pleased I don't live there anymore, but it was
Really?
great fun. Yeah. I like big cities.
Okay, sure. I get that. But you grew up, I mean, Durban especially in the early years, 60s, 70s, 80s, I mean, that was a happening town. You know,
It was.
people used to, yeah, there were so many bands playing, so many clubs. Just
I don't
mention
know
some of the
how.
clubs.
Yeah, there was Tiles. Tiles was an all-time favorite. It was like a London club. Bands used to
Yes,
come out from Europe, from England, who never went
right.
anywhere else in the country. They only played
Yeah.
Tiles. It was a terrific
Okay.
place. A lot of local artists. It's not as though
Okay.
it was only overseas artists. Then there
Mm-hmm.
was the Carb, the Arena.
Right.
Then there were the beachfront places.
Of
Uh,
course.
Lonsdale, the hotels, of course, who
The
that could,
Lonsdale, of course. I
the
even
places
played
that
there,
could
wasn't
sell booze.
and the LA hotel, was that still there?
Yes, and then of course where the Flames were, what was that called? Riviera Hotel, I think.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you met those guys early on in the years, like the Flames, Ricky Fattar, Blondie, all those
yeah,
guys.
yeah, I remember
No.
I was writing for Trend, which was a supplement in the Daily News. I decided I wanted
Okay.
a column there, so I went to see the editor who I didn't know, and I said, "You must give me a column." And he said, "Oh, he wasn't a very humorous 14-year-old man." And he sent me to see someone else, and he said, "You must go and speak to Owen Coetzee." Now, Owen Coetzee was the most darling man, and he
Okay.
had started Trend. He was mad about music. And I said, "I want a column, Owen." He said, "Sure. What do you want to write about?" I said, "I don't know. We must talk." And he said, "Well, you're at university. We'll call you university correspondent." And after I said, "Oh, no, Owen, I want to write about whatever I like." So I became what I wrote about whatever I liked.
Which
And
was whatever you liked.
a lot of, and where did
Was
we start?
well, we
How did
we
we
were
get
talking.
there?
How did we get there? Well, I was asking about the Durban thing. You'd also studied speech and drama and stuff like that. What were you studying at university?
I did. My majors were drama and English. Although I also did politics for 2 years. I did history of
Okay,
architecture, which I loved, and I suppose those were my main subjects.
right.
Yeah.
But you never, even though you played music, you never had the desire to really become a musician, did you?
Oh, I would have loved to be able to play
Really?
and sing. But Richard said, I can sing, but none of the notes are none of the notes bear any relation
Matching.
to each other. So I
No,
think
they have
early
no.
on I discovered I must tell you a story. When I was in London,
Please.
I was
Yes.
for an audition to Bristol Drama School. And
Okay.
there was a guy who had a lot of connection to South Africa called Leon Eagles. And I said, "Leon, the audition requires me to sing a song. Who can help me?" He said, "There's a guy whose wife is a bluebell. He will teach you. He's an opera singer." So I said, "Okay." And I went to him, and he couldn't stop touching me all over. And he said, "I've got to do an audition." I can't even remember his name. I got
The
to the
casting couch.
I got to the audition, and I'd prepared. He had prepared me to do "Consider Yourself" from Oliver. Now,
Okay.
I,
Oh,
I
okay.
was reasonably confident about this. I got to the audition, and they said, "Have you got a song prepared?" I said, "Of course, of course. I'm doing "Consider Yourself" from Oliver." They said, "Fine, go ahead." And I'd sung 3 notes, and they said, "Stop, stop, stop. You're in the wrong key. Can you drop it a few?" I said, "No." So that was
Of
the
course
end of
not.
that. I could not drop it a key.
Well, that sort of fixed your music career. So you didn't do any musical theatre, I don't think.
It didn't stop me. When we had the theatre downstairs in Cape Town, I told you I was with Norman Coates and Tony Oz,
Yes.
who with
Yes.
Marlowe Scott Wilson had been Canticle. And
That's
it's a
right.
whole series of coincidences. I was living in London. I spoke to Tony on the phone when I meant to speak to Brian Miller, and I was coming out to visit my parents to say hi. I was living in London. Nothing was getting me back here. Uh, at my parents one day was Dan Pienaar, who actually was Johnny Clegg's stepfather, but he was a friend of
Aha.
yeah, he was a friend of my eldest sister's or a colleague. And
Mm-hmm.
said, "Would you like to go to dinner?" I said, "Sure." And we went to one hotel. He said, "This is crummy. Let's go to the Edward." We go to the Edward, and I say, I'm sure I spoke to one of these guys on the phone in London. So come the end of the cabaret, I went up to them and I said, "Did I speak to one of you at Brian Miller's place?" And Tony Osler said, "Yes, you did." Anyway, we
Okay.
became friends, the 3 of us or 4 of us, while I was still in South Africa. And Norman said, "You're just the person I'm looking for. Come and start a theatre with me." And I said, "No, I'm going back to London. Nothing will induce me to stay here." Anyway, one thing led to another, and
You were induced.
I was in. Norman was. They were in Cape Town, and Norman said, "At least come and have a look. Come with me to find a venue." So we went around. We looked at a place called Human and Pit. We thought, this would make a great alternative theatre, the Human Pit. But we didn't take that. We then went to Milano Sundry at, what's the restaurant was in Rondebosch? Anyway, it's still in Sea Point. And he gave us the downstairs room, which was a club at one stage, maybe seated 50 people. And that's where we started. And so I said to Norman, "Okay, I guess I'm staying a while. Then I'll go back to London."
Okay.
And
now, how many years later now are we talking, darling? It's like, woo.
I did go back, but then yes. I missed what we'd had, and then I ended up coming back.
Well, you'd started something quite special there. You know, that downstairs theatre was very well known, very well respected place. That fringe thing, you know, that was going on at the time, and also involved in the space. I'm sure you.
La Perla.
Oh, I've just been reminded that.
So in case anybody wants to know who she's talking to, it's not her dog. It's her husband, Richard, who is doing the research as we go. Thank you, Richard. We appreciate it very much. So let's talk a little bit. Next, the dogs can come. The talking dogs. I wouldn't be surprised. Along the way, how the people that you met and stuff like that. Okay, so we've talked about the Flames. Before we go to London,
I'll tell you about the Flames.
Please, that's what I want. I want to hear these stories.
The guys said to me, "We want to have a show in Swaziland. Won't you come with us and you can write about it?" So my dad had an obsession about us not taking lifts. And I said, "I'm a journalist. I have to do the story." So my middle sister was in Durban for some reason. And he said, "Rosalie, you go with Suzanne." So I said, "Okay." So we were driving to Swaziland, and just as well she was there, because the driver was falling asleep at the wheel, and Rosalie called it. And she went, "Hey, hey, hey, hey." And so
she saved your life.
She did, all of us. And then we got to Swaziland. We went from Manzini to the other place and back and forwards, and we had the most super time, but no concert ever happened. But I had them as friends. Then when we were driving back to Durban, we were stopped by the police multiple times. "What are the white girls doing with this band?" And I just laughed, apparently. That was very helpful.
They probably thought, what is the white girl doing with this band, and what have they been doing? Because she's giggling her way through this. I mean, anything could have happened, Suzanne. We don't know. And in those days, even if I was driving to Durban, I would inevitably be stopped. You know, what are you doing driving on your own even? So, hello. Yeah. Look, they were very interesting times.
My brother used to take my mother's car and drive ANC cadres to the border.
Oh, my God. Well, there you go. So anything could have been happening. So you decide your decision to go to London, you kind of saw yourself as an exile in a way?
Oh, yes. Well, first of all, my 3 siblings preceded me to London.
Okay.
I was the youngest, and so as soon as I finished university, I booked my ticket. And in those days, I didn't even stay for graduation. I had to pay for missing graduation. Anyway, I got to London and I was very fortunate because I had a ready-made family in London.
Okay.
And I used to call myself a voluntary apartheid exile.
Okay.
And yeah, and I felt that quite strongly. We all did. My brother
Yes.
specifically was very political. And
Yeah.
it was just great being in a big
Big
city.
city.
Yeah,
Yeah, the big city thing and the whole, I mean, the access to anything you wanted, theatre, music, etc., etc. And we
yeah.
were so stifled here in South Africa. What years were those? Was
Not
that
really.
like,
It
okay,
was
you have to,
uh,
70s, 60s?
I think 77. No, I think I got there in 70 and 71 and 72. I think something like that.
Okay.
And, but London was quite a quiet place in those days, funnily enough. Okay, there was the swinging 60s. But I remember
Yes,
going
yes.
to a play called The Beard, which was an imaginary meeting between Billy the Kid and Jean Harlow in hell. It
Yes,
only
in hell.
started at 10 o'clock at night. Otherwise, it
Wow.
would have been banned. And,
Oh,
uh,
really?
and the British,
Interesting.
and politically, I don't know if you've watched this. There's a thing called Mangrove, and we
No.
were staying near there, near Notting Hill Gate. There was a
Yes, I know
restaurant
that
called
place.
Mangrove, and the police never stopped raiding them. They were West Indians who owned it, and there was a huge court case about it. And it's a fabulous program if you've got a chance to see it. I won't
I
go
love
too,
stuff like that.
but it reminds one of how entrenched racism was in British law.
Oh, I can, of course. Well, I mean, when you think about it, um, being the India thing and everywhere they went, they colonized, etc., etc. I mean, it was a whole thing. We can
Yeah.
talk about that too. So London meeting. I mean, you met some prolific people there. People, the guy that sort of started Top of the Pops. What was his name? Stan Dorfman.
Dorfman, yeah, he was South
Sure.
African, and he
Yes.
doesn't get credit for having started Top of the Pops. Someone else does, but as I recall it, I met him as the person who had started Top of the Pops. And then he
Okay.
introduced me in turn to Herbie Kretzmer, who, I
Yes.
mean,
Now,
had
what
doors
a
open.
writer, a
Yeah,
writer of note. He did like Les Mis. He worked with Charles Aznavour.
yes. At that stage,
He
he hadn't done Les Mis yet, but he did work with Aznavour and he worked with, what was the Greek woman singer with the black
um
glasses?
yes, Nana Mouskouri.
That's the one. He worked with her,
Aha!
and I
Wow.
met Terence Stamp at his apartment.
He's still a good-looking man. That is a.
Yes,
What did you
that's
do at his apartment? Did you just meet him at his apartment,
of
Suzanne?
course, of
Good
course.
girl. Excellent. So, like being in the world that you were moving in, I mean, you were moving in. It's a weird thing. It's a different thing. Actually being the star or the musician or the whatever, and being the journalist because you're always privy to different areas of their lives.
Yes, if you've got to find a way in. Not a lot of people
Absolutely.
don't allow access, but especially
That's
right
it.
about musicians, that was easier. They
Yeah.
want to
Because
be at the
musicians are easy. They'll just let anybody, you want to interview me? Yeah, come in. It's fine. I want to
but
tell you who's watching. Who's watching the show for now. We've got Mark Wilson, Graham Brett. We've got Dougie Ramage, a friend of mine, Marion from Germany. Hello, Marion, darling. Gail
Marion,
Prosser. Gail's all the way. She's joining the show. She's in Springs. Conley van der Westhuizen.
my stepson.
Francine, is that who it is? Hello, Conley. Nice to meet you. Francine, all the way from Holland. Jenny Horton, local girl. Um, let's see who else is Trevor Kerr. Trevor, you know Trevor. He's
Yes,
in Cape Town. So that's
right.
who's watching. So we're not alone out here. Trust me. We've
I
got
hope there
people.
are a few more people than that.
No, there are a few more people than that. Don't worry. They just can't all get on at the same time.
I think my headmaster, my former headmaster, is watching.
What's his name?
Isidore Kahanovitz and his
Okay.
wife Muriel. If they could get
Well,
on, because just before we went on air, I got a message. Where is the link?
oh God, I know. Listen, this is a little bit different. Working virtually is very different. I mean, you've been working on your own thing and you can do some virtual stuff, but a lot of people, it's a weird sort of medium for them, you know?
Yes, yes.
I like it. I didn't in the beginning, but I do like it now.
Me
Um,
too.
I want to mention Carol King, James Taylor, Jermaine Greer. I mean, for
Yeah,
goodness sake, those are
I
names.
all these, as I said, the people I met opened doors. I was invited to a party for James Taylor and Carol King on a boat on the Thames on a very stormy night. And poor
Oh,
Carol King was very pregnant and not doing
gosh.
very well on the on the boat. They left early, but it was a good party.
I bet
then,
it was a good party. They were
then
together at the time. Weren't they married? They were together,
no,
married,
no, I think they were just friends.
just
Mm,
friends. Oh,
yeah,
okay. Carol King, was she never with James Taylor?
no, I don't believe so.
Maybe there
But
was a
then,
Carly Simon.
yes, Carly Simon was married to James Taylor.
There we go. I got my women mixed up.
Yeah. And then I was at drama school in London and I saw an
Okay.
ad. I always vacillated between acting and writing, and it was a very hard
Right.
call. And then I saw an ad in somewhere that two guys were looking for a writer. So no trouble to me. I went off for the interview. I mean, half of London was there. I didn't have, I wasn't officially allowed to work there, but with my little book of cuttings, they employed me. And
Okay.
one guy was a bit of an unhappy chap, and the other was fabulous. And he had this wife called Fran, who was a Cockney woman, and she wanted to come with me to everything. And I remember I went to the launch of a Jimi Hendrix book written by Chris Welsh, who was on Melody Maker. And
Wow. Wow.
while we were there, I must have seen Richard Neville, who was a journalist from Australia and one of the editors on Oz magazine. Anyway,
Okay.
I went to meet, I met Richard Neville some by hook or by crook. And he said, why don't you come to my place afterwards? I'm having some people around,
Okay.
but you must come alone. So I said to Fran, I've been invited to Richard Neville's place. She says, oh, great, let's go. I said, I'm sorry, you can't come with me. She said, what do you mean? I said, I've been told I have to come alone. She says, well, then you can't go. I said, I'm going.
You had
And
to
when I
go.
got there was Jermaine Greer and some American girl, and
Wow.
Richard Neville passed around a joint some people partook in. And
Some
this,
people. Yeah.
this American girl went, wow, this is like being with Hera in person. And I went,
Oh,
huh?
wow.
And then Richard Neville stood up and he said, sorry, folks, I've got to go and write about this. I said, what are you going to write about? He said, Jermaine had a joint with us. I said, that's newsworthy? He said, one day someone's going to buy my diary. And he actually became one of Australia's most bought, I think, fiction writers. And
Really?
when I was looking up what happened to him for the show, I saw he died a few years ago. But they moved to London, the editors of Oz, which was a Sydney magazine, and they launched it in London. And one night, Richard Neville said to his co-editor, "I'm feeling bored of this. I'm too old, and we must find something more exciting to do." He wasn't yet 30. And they then decided, they advertised in the magazine for kids under 18 to come to edit an issue of Oz. And a whole bunch from Reading made their way to London. There was Charles Shaw Murray, who's a very well-known music writer these days, and various under 18-year-olds, although I don't think Charles Shaw Murray was under 18. And they were told, "You're not getting paid, but you can say what you like." So they did. And it led to the longest obscenity trial in London at the time, at Old Bailey.
You're kidding me. Oh my gosh.
As Charles Murray said, they didn't think that we could be sex, drugs, and rock and roll. They thought we must have been influenced. Anyway, it was a huge thing. I'm writing about it at the moment because I suddenly remembered this. In fact, there's a photograph you've got. I was at the Oz benefit at Hyde Park.
Okay. We're going to look at some photos, and I really want to talk about your photos. You've got some incredible photos. Even, didn't you work for Melody Maker at some time?
No. There was a South African version called Music Maker. Or was it the other way?
Yes.
I got a job there, but I was so concerned about changing my image. I felt I couldn't be a writer and an actress, so I had a pseudonym for writing at the time, and I was Susie Boocham.
Okay. Where did you get that from?
Oh, there was a restaurant in Knightsbridge called Beach. Well, no, there was a road. It's pronounced Beecham. Beecham Place. Yes,
okay. Susie Beecham.
I was Susie Beecham. I like that name.
Well, it doesn't sound bad. It worked. So I think we should look at some of these photos because I want to ask you about them. They are amazing. There's some really spectacular stuff here. Where were you there?
That's in Hyde Park. That's the Oz benefit. I didn't show you probably the best of the lot, which is on my Facebook page. This was the guy with the guitar was a friend of mine from university. And the reason I put this up on my Facebook page is because he died a week ago. And I thought it was a suitable tribute to him. And
but it's got that vibe, that like hanging out, you know, in those days when people would come to a show or a park or something and just sit with their guitars. People used to hang out, and I think it's very authentic, you know. And
Traffic played there that day, but there was a lot of infighting. And so they weren't called Traffic, they just were called by their names. And Dave Mason.
Stevie Winwood.
Yes, he was there. Okay. But Dave Mason, who was a founding member, was in and out the band. And in fact, Stevie Winwood had later said, the problem with Dave Mason is he used to come along with a song. We used to say, let's talk about a song. And they would go through a song and someone would add something and say, no, why don't we do this? Dave Mason would come and say, here's the song, let's sing it. And Stevie Winwood said, he treated us like his band.
Okay. Okay. All right, let's move along. What's next?
That was the theatre downstairs. This was, we worked with a well-known South African called Frank Lazarus, who directed it. I think Norman might have adapted it. This was called Alice. It was an adult version of Alice in Wonderland.
And is that you? That's you there. Yes.
My husband, Alan, I've just forgotten his name. He was the lead. He was my lead actor when we started. But eventually he dropped out and Tony Osler came in his place. But the whole concept was Norman Coates' idea.
Okay.
And it was a very special time. Oh, guess who
That
that
is a special. That is special to see Cliff Richard in a Speedo.
is. He probably thinks so too. That was many years ago.
I
He used
adore
to
him. I love
Africa
him. I think he's great.
Yeah, yeah. I know that Richard Loring had something to do with this visit, but in fact, there was what was that studio in Blairgowrie?
The
You know, who
audio
was the
arts,
guy and who was the guy
Robert
from?
Schroeder. Robert
Robert
Schroeder.
Schroeder used to fly to London just to see Cliff Richard. He thought his
I don't
shows
blame him.
so phenomenal. When he saw Cliff was on, he flew to London.
Well, Cliff's kind of like a pretty cool guy, I think, and always a great singer and always great songs. I mean,
I think he
Miss
had a
what's
very unfair and very rough time of late without anything proven.
absolutely. And I actually saw when I was in England last year, I saw a documentary about that whole palaver.
Yeah,
And you know, it's like, you know, tainting people with a certain kind of brush.
yeah,
And that's it. Once they've done that, no matter whether you profess innocence and whether you've been proven innocent,
yeah,
everybody, you get left with this bad taste in your mouth. And I don't blame him for being very upset and very angry about
yeah.
that.
Very unfair.
Terrible.
Okay.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Simon Le Bon and John Taylor from Duran Duran.
Duran.
As
The
you can
pretty
see, we had a
boys.
lot of fun. And I think it was just a party.
It was just a party, hey?
Yeah, nice guys. This
Oh my
was,
God, I know these guys.
yep, that was
Oh my
Ballyhoo.
Lord. Yeah, Mick Matthews and Ati and Derek Drain.
Yep, yep.
Jeez.
And Emil
Wow.
Dogby in the middle, who I
That's
adored.
who, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And this was a Sorry Awards night. Tinus Esterhazen used to drag me in to be a Sorry's judge with great regularity.
But you were good at that, you know? Because you were
Thanks.
in the music scene. You were so in the music. Sipo, our lovely Sipo, we love him.
Love Sipo. This was at PJ Power's book launch. She asked, I
Okay.
think I just got back from London on a holiday, and she said, please come because I mention you in the book related to Billboard magazine. And so I went to the launch and
That's
bumped into
super.
my old buddy.
There she is.
Yeah.
I had her on the show right at the beginning. We old chums from way back also.
I'm sure. She's
And
lovely.
you look the same. You do. You look the
Both
same.
from Durban. This is John Helliwell from Supertramp. I actually did a very nice interview with him, if I say so myself. It was a lengthy interview, and I don't remember anything about it now, but at the time,
But I just love I love the band. We did quite a few. Every time we were overseas doing our like TV tours, Supertramp were there a lot, and we got to see them live as well. And what a band! I mean,
yeah,
you know, there's no bands like that anymore. Those very melodic bands that take you somewhere else. Hey,
yep. Oh, Lance.
our lovely Lance, we love him so much because you did that country thing. It
I
was
did.
country
He was
people.
a country people, yes. And
Mm,
I suddenly had a bright idea.
yes.
There it is. I thought I'm going to write about country music. It's a neglected genre, and I have
Absolutely.
a mini history of country music at the outset. And my friend John Miller, who I didn't know terribly well at the time, but he came to me and he said, I said, I need a researcher, John. Can you work for me? And he said, sure. And John had come to me in the Federal Hotel one night, where we used to occasionally have a drink across the road from South African Associated Newspapers. And
Okay.
John, who is blind, would cross Commissioner Street with just a stick. And he
I
knew,
remember John so well. My God, he used to drive me mad.
well, I mean, it was
Just with his stick.
terrifying. And then
Oh my gosh.
he knew there was a Porsche parked on the corner of Commissioner and Polly where the hotel was. And I say John used to look for it. And he used to beat it to death.
I know. John was like that. He had the most wicked sense of humor. He came to visit us at, he did an interview of something, I can't remember, at my house when I was living in Yeovil. And we had a big, like a sort of hill. So you had to either go down the path, or if you went down the hill, you were screwed because you had nowhere. You had to run, run, run. And he just went damning with his stick down this hill. We nearly had a heart attack watching him go. We thought he was going to end up on the streets lying in the pile. He was hysterical. I love him.
If I may, I'd like to tell you a little story about John.
Please.
He heard that I'd started this music supplement in the Sunday Express called Express Beat. And he used to go to the Fed in the hope of finding me there, which was not difficult. And one day he came up to me and he said, could he talk to me? So I said, sure. And he said, he gave me a bit of background and he said, I've always loved music. I'm a musician. I'm from Zimbabwe. I said, write for me. And he said, pardon? I said, write for me. And he said, oh, okay. And the next thing, I got a story from him, and I called him in. I said, John, did you interview this person face to face? He said, no, I did it over the phone. And I said, if you don't do face to face interviews, you're not writing for me. And he said, okay. And that's the last I used to see of John. He used to go off to do stories, and he used to be at lunch for the whole day.
I remember. He really got into it. Where is he? Is he still alive?
Yes, he writes for me still. I publish him on my website.
And please send him my love. Please send him my love.
You can tell him.
Absolutely adored him. If he's on, let me see who else is on. Let's see. Oh, there's a Richard van der Westhuizen. Do you know him?
I do.
I've got Pearl Universe from Chicago.
Oh, that's Pearl. She's darling. She's my darling. We
via New England.
We met via Twitter, and we've been great friends. We haven't met, but she's very outspoken and very political, and she's been dying a death every day with Trump in charge.
I can imagine.
I'm sure she's cheered at the moment, but it's very hard. But she's just got herself a little house. She's a performer. She went to France and worked in France for quite a long time. And she at one stage had this idea of coming here and getting me on the stage with her. I said, that's in my part. No.
The days are over.
But we hope to write together.
What is it? Trevor Kerr is in Trevor, darling. I know you're in Joburg now. Sorry about that. Dougie Ramage, this friend of mine, has got so much inside info. He mentions, what does he mention here? Isidore at 9. What is that?
I don't know.
It must be a song from a band or something. Okay. I'm still looking. Richard, your husband. I believe you've got a video of a song that he did.
When I went to the SABC, I went on a course with a friend of mine, Tommy McClelland, at the helm. I'd met
Okay.
him in Cape Town, and he was a really good director. He was a documentary maker, and he worked for 50/50, and I
Oh,
worked there for a
yes.
while with him. And I went on a course because you arrive at the SABC and they say, make programs. And you've never made a
Just
program in your life before.
never in
And
your life.
Tommy's course, he said, we're going to make music videos. I said, now you're talking. And I said, Richard, I love Anthem. I probably didn't understand it very well, but I made this video, which has nothing to do with the words. And it was with Richard Lochner, the cook, and Sir Rendran Reddy, who I absolutely loved. He had a great sense of humor. He was also
Was
from
he on
Durban.
keyboards?
He was
Okay,
a
keyboard player.
concert pianist, actually, from when he
Oh.
was a teenager. And
So,
he used to laugh every time I said anything because he didn't understand Afrikaans. I used to sing along with him.
so this was the song. So let me just tell everybody, Richard is your husband.
Yes. And he's a very good
Indeed.
songwriter.
And he's a very good songwriter. We know about Richard's past. Yes, we do. Let's look at the video. It's just a lovely song. I think it's beautiful. And it's so reminiscent of the time, you know?
Yeah. It's out
And
of
you were
sync.
Yeah, but
That
you were
is-
the director.
Yes, and I can see the story, the non-story.
We've got to have an eagle flying.
Yes. The driving.
De schimmer oor ons land, die vreemde gloed van 'n verre brandantwoord, die nevels van die rook, mis en reën, die trans staan as skilwag oor die donker dronse woonlag, waar die slang in die koue aarde bos. Oor die windkant, oor die swart kant, oor die skaapbord van Lieverland,
I like it.
kanonne al hoe nader, ongehoor en ongesiene, in die druk van morfine, loop die uurglas nou al gaande leeg. Harivers is daar vrede,
Surrender.
I love it.
is daar vrede, en 'n vrede, en 'n nuwe Harivers is daar vrede, wie weet waar, mag die goede ons bewaar, en liewers is daar mag die vrede ons bewaar, en liewers is daar mag die vrede ons bewaar, mag die
Wow.
goede ons almal bewaar. Waarin daar die donker maan, wat sal op sy sikkel staan, die
The breakdown of the fall in Germany.
en vrug en blond, voor die silwer, voor die rooi, voor die mespunt en die prooi, slaan die staal blauw weerlig op die val by se lek.
It was very cool for its time, Suzanne.
Nou weer klink
You know? Yeah, I thought so. Very sort of off kilter and weird. I like it.
I still like it. When
Yeah. Who's got the long ponytail?
Dr. de Pop.
Okay.
No longer, but he did.
He's not really a doctor. But anyway.
No, the cook.
The cook. Richard.
No, Lochner.
Loch. Sorry. Okay.
I love the last shot.
Mag wie goed ons bewaart. Hey, lieve zuster, mag wie vrede ons bewaart.
Does he still have that hat?
Yes.
It's a good hat. I'm a hat person. That's a good hat. Wow.
Mag wie goed ons allen bewaart.
They were giggling at the end there.
My favorite shot.
That is so funny.
Yeah.
Which drive-in was that?
It was sort of where down Bays Nordier, that sort of way. But what was it? The Stair? No, I don't.
Top
remember.
Star. The Top Star.
Top Star. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Okay, wow. So I need to ask you about Patrick van Blurk.
Oh yes, my dear Patrick.
Oh yes.
What do you want to know? We've
Well,
been friends
for a long time, and also you ended up going to Midam together.
We did, but before then,
Yes.
I asked him to write a column for me on Express Beat, where I
That's
also
right.
had pianist Esther Hazen writing some record reviews for me. And Patrick was not the most reliable person in those days. And I said, Patrick, he says, I was a very strict editor. No, I had to be with Patrick. I had these columns for him, spaced in the paper. And eventually I said, you've got to come in and write the columns on the premises. I don't trust you to write them anywhere else. Because I'd find him, as he says, in a bordello. No, not really.
But
and-
yes.
But he wrote always interesting stuff. And then
Yeah.
we went to meet him. But there's a story behind that story as well.
The bar, the story at the when you had to you forced them to open the. That's another story. Okay.
The reason I was invited to meet him was I had a friend called Simon Draper who was also at university with me.
I remember Simon Draper.
And he is Richard
Clayderman.
No. Richard Virgin.
Oh, Branson.
Richard Branson's cousin.
Okay, but there was a Clayderman connection. That's why I said Richard Clay. Sorry about that.
In London, when Virgin first started as record shops,
A record label, yeah.
yeah, Richard employed all his cousins who were all South African. And
Okay.
then, cut 2 years later, or a few years later, Simon comes to Joburg and he calls me and he says, I'm here to see EMI. We're going to do a deal with them. Now, they hadn't yet had a #1 hit. But this is what Simon told me. I said, Simon, that is appalling. He says, why? I said, you're an independent company. How can you not be supporting the independents? And he said,
Yes.
okay, who should we do a deal with? So I named a few. I don't want you to think I just said Peter Cook. And he did a deal with Peter Cook and Principal Records. And that's how they got the label. And then Peter invited me to meet him to say thank you to me. And I spoke to my editor at the Express. I told him the whole story. I didn't want any accusations of any fraud or anything else. And they said, you go and enjoy yourself and you be giving you money to spend and you don't have to account for it. I think they thought I was so badly paid. They better give me money. So we went off to meet him, and I was terrified of flying. Wilma Lawson Turnbull was, then she worked for, what was it? What was UCLA? No, what was the French airline? Anyway, Wilma came to see us off at the airport and bid us farewell, and off this wild bunch went. And it was
I can imagine.
Morris Horwitz and Martin Locke. And I mean, there were so many of us. Neville, what is the singer's name who was
Nash.
one of Neville Nash. But there was a far naughtier bunch of people on our plane. They were the drivers from the racing drivers who'd come out to race at Kyalami. And they were having fights. Anyway, that's a long story.
I love it. That's a fantastic story.
And then in Cannes, I was sitting outside with Adrian Wright, who I subsequently only recently discovered. I knew he was in Human League, but I thought he was a musician. But he wasn't a musician. He was just accredited as a full-on member of the band. He was a
that's
photographer.
Interesting. Okay.
And we were sitting outside, and he said, "We've just had our first #1 hit with
Don't you want me, baby? Don't you want me? Oh, is that the song?
That's the song. And that was Virgin's first #1.
Wow.
As well. Yeah. And then
that's a good story.
Then I was invited to a party by Olivier Toussaint, I've pronounced his name, who was Richard Clayderman's manager. And
That's where that came in.
Said to me, "I'd like to meet them. Can you arrange an invite?" So I said, "Sure." So Clive came along, and he had one of the biggest independent publishing companies at the time.
Of course.
Zomba. And he was doing a deal with them and got Richard Clayderman's publishing for the UK. I'm still waiting for my cut.
I can imagine how many little sort of, marriages you made, but not real marriages, just marriages of people meeting and doing stuff and doing deals, and of course never got cut in, I'm sure.
No. But Clive was a long-standing friend, and I met him originally in Durban when he was in the In Crowd, which I think was the first. They were the first Motown band in South Africa.
And that's a thing, because that was like a different sound, you know. Not a lot of people were doing that kind of sound, and then slowly it started because it was mainly the black artists that were doing that stuff.
Yes. And they were a good band. He only sang one song, Clive, and that was Monday, Monday.
Okay. Next time I see him, I'm going to go, Monday, Monday.
Now, this is where we come to clubs, don't we?
Yes. We do come to club. Firstly, you did a lot of, you did feature us quite a lot. We'd done a few interviews with you.
Yes, but
I remember.
With Graham, of course.
Well, of course, we were with Graham Biggs. Before we signed the contract with Graham Biggs, Substitute was flying up the charts, and all everybody was just saying, for God's sake, this band has to come over. Yeah, but it's South African, and if they come over, they're going to be boycotted and blah, blah, blah. There was all that. Okay, tell them it's a Dutch band, whatever. So we finally got there, but just before that happened, Graham had a meeting with us and said, right, we've got to sign the contracts now, otherwise you're not going overseas. And Clive Calder with Mike Fuller came to our hotel. They wanted to sign us, and we were working at the President Hotel. Do you remember that President Hotel downtown? Yes. We had like a Saturday afternoon gig that Clout used to do, and Clive Calder said, sign with me, and Beg said, well, if you sign with them, you're not going overseas. So we said, well, we want to go overseas. And we signed.
I think you made the wrong decision.
Absolutely. We totally made the wrong. But who knows? You know, when you look back in retrospect and you say, well, I could have, I should have, I may have, the may haves and the could haves, one never knows. Because Cloud
But
shouldn't have ended when it ended, but it did.
what was that, 81 that you brought?
81.
Now,
Yeah.
why, what was that? Was that about the instruments not being played by women?
Not at all. Had nothing to
What?
do with it. Nobody cared anymore because already we were all playing on the albums now. You know, after that first album or the second album, Ingy played drums on stuff. We had everybody sort of all mishing in. The first album we did, we used the guys because we needed it out quick. And it would have taken us a while because we were okay, but we weren't fantastic yet. We did become fantastic later.
Is
You know,
it
the
true
band was
that
really
one of the songs is still charging somewhere?
absolutely. Substitute still gets played every single day in the UK, in Belgium, in Holland, in Germany. Save Me still plays. I mean, I get royalties from overseas for Needle Time.
Amazing.
It is insane. So I've got a picture of you and I haven't got it here, it's in my scrapbook in America. A picture of you and I standing at 20th Century or Plum Crazy, probably, or one of those, just standing and talking. It's a most fabulous picture. I will never forget. I want to find it. When I go back to the States, I'm going to bring back my photo albums. Just I always respected you, I must say. I had great respect for you because you were the real deal. You were doing the interviews. You worked, you worked for Billboard later years, but you did Top 20 magazine.
Yeah. Not
Was
the
Lynn
greatest song in the world, but
No, but
that
Lynn Boardman was working that as well.
I don't remember that.
Okay.
But that's what got me thinking about approaching the Sunday Express with my own
That
stuff.
was it. With your express beat.
Yeah. That
Absolutely.
was
And that was with Pat. I think Patrick was
He
involved
was.
because he was writing for you. You did Sun City with Queen and all that kind of stuff.
Should I tell you that story?
Please tell us the story.
I had been with Darling, which was one of my favorite jobs.
Absolutely. I wanted to mention Darling magazine was fabulous.
After Meedem, I went to London and I saw Stanley Ace, who was bureau chief of the newspapers that I worked for. And he said, "You've got a new editor." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, Ken Owen." I said, "Oh." He said, "Do you know him?" I said, "No." And he laughed. Anyway, I got back to South Africa and we did not get on from day one. And Rex Gibson and he just left me to my own devices. So when Ken told me he was putting my supplement, my baby, into the women's pages, and he didn't want to lose me as a journalist, I said, "Well, you can't keep me that way," and I left. And but I seem to get phone calls always at the most appropriate times. I got a call from a chap called John Farquhar, who was an amazing guy, a real eccentric, and he was in the ad business. And he phoned me one day and he said, "Do you want to be editor of Darling?" I said, "Pardon?" He said, "How'd you like to be editor of Darling magazine?" I said, "Is it something I can say no to?" I said, "Love it." So he said, "Okay, I've nominated you. You'll fly down and meet the Hymans, who were the family who owned the business." Long story short, I was appointed without anybody knowing about them even looking for a new editor, including the then editor of Darling.
Oh,
so
my
I
God.
arrived in Durban ahead of Rumors, or alongside Rumors, and there was a very, very unfortunate vibe. But things had not yet got to their worst, because I said, I'm glad to meet everyone, and I'm moving the magazine to Johannesburg. So that was...
That's a good footing to start on. It's like, hello, changing all your lives.
Yes, but it all worked out in the end. And when Presscore then bought Republican Press, they knew nothing about magazines, and they closed the one with the smallest circulation. But we were a niche publication. There was nothing else in the field. And anyway,
Definitely.
they closed. And
that must have been very sad, very, very sad, Tom. To lose that. That was like your baby, that was really your baby.
We all adored it. I mean, when at that time I said I'd only take over if I could move it to Johannesburg. I hadn't, of course, realized that to do so, I had to fly to Durban every Monday and fly back to Joburg every Friday. I went for 2 courses. I went on 2 fly with confidence courses. It didn't help very much.
Are you still afraid of flying?
No, I'm better than I was. I don't know where we started on the story, but it was also part of the Cannes story. I'm much better than I was. But
well, I did hear another little tidbit that I have to mention.
I've got to tell you the funny story.
Oh, okay, of course. Yes. Sorry, I just wanted to mention you passing out in Paris,
Pardon?
Passing out in your breakfast coat in Paris.
Who's this from? Patrick.
Your husband.
Oh, please, that's not quite accurate.
Okay, that's fine. Tell me the story. Let's finish the story. I want to hear the story.
This is me. We flew to London. We went to London, and then we had to fly back for our connecting flight to Joburg. Okay. We missed the flight, and we arrived in Paris, and we could see our flight, but they would not wait for us. So the airline put us up at some ghastly little joint in Orly. And we were bored out of our minds. There was nothing. Patrick says, I led the way to getting the booze from the locked fridges. Not true. But I had just got the job as billboard correspondent. And there was a friend on the trip, and she said, why don't we go? I said, why don't we go to a club? So she and I set off for a club, and she spoke French, and she was rattling away, and she said, Madame Billboard. So we were invited into the club and treated with great respect. But in those days, when one smoked, we had run out of cigarettes, and I didn't know that 2 of the party who were not in the same room kept on being disturbed by us by, have you got any cigarettes? And they anyway, I don't know why we were onto that story. That was the French trip. And
but it's a good story.
We were lost in France, and we were lost in France.
And you were lost in France. Oh my God! Are you writing your memoirs?
I've written the darling part, but I've yet to write anything else. I would like to, but I'm busy. Even in the days of COVID, I'm very busy writing speeches.
Okay, so where are you now? What are you doing now?
I'm running my own company.
Yes.
I was at SABC for far too long. And
you did that, what was that show? Sundowner.
Yes, that's how I joined. Val de Bloch phoned me, another phone call. And I didn't know her terribly well at the time, and she said, one of my staff is going on maternity leave. You've never worked in electronic media. Come and find out what it's about. So I said, She said, I will give you a title of senior producer. I said, that will do. Okay.
You're easily bought, Suzanne. Easily bought.
I found the SABC the most incurious place I've ever worked.
It
But I made
is, hey.
some programs I liked, but I have volunteered to work on, and I was seconded to the election unit. And we didn't even see people voting. They had a special voting unit for us to vote in. And nobody even talked about the elections. It was really a very odd place to work in. For me, anyway.
Yeah, I think the SABC is a very odd institution.
Yeah, you could say
Hey?
now what we're doing is more of the same.
Yes, more of the same. I'm just going to say good night to everybody who's been listening. Thank you for being with us. It is always divine. We're almost finished. We've still got a little bit more to go. Can you believe it? It's already after 8, but we always end up talking longer. I'm sorry. We just do. We've still got a couple of things to cover. Just a personal thing. Your principles that have served you in your life. You've been quite a big shot, with Darling Magazine and even SABC, and wherever you've worked, you've had jobs with merit. You've always had, you've had stuff. It's worthwhile stuff. I'm just asking you about your principles, how you've stayed who you are.
I suppose I am pretty tough, and I've always been principled and morally driven.
Yes.
It was part of our upbringing, I suppose. My parents instilled it in us. I don't know. It's just I'm grateful that I'm not like some of the politicians around the world at the moment. Gratitude for, one also is impressed by people. The people who influence one chooses those people to a large extent. And
Absolutely.
I have 2 sisters and a brother, and I think we're all morally driven. And we're very close as well. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
And that is, it's something that holds you. It holds you in place.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It is your morals and it is your principles that hold you in place, where you come from and how you choose to live your life. And whatever you do up to now and whatever you keep doing, it will always be with that integrity. And there's a lot to be said for that, Suzanne, because people have, no, I mean it, because people have lost their way. There are a lot of moral compasses that have gone, people have lost their way, and especially times like this. I mean, as a journalist, what would you even say about musicians if you were working in music again? What would have happened to music and musicians for the past 7 months? I mean, what a thing. That's never happened before. There've been lulls, there've been changeovers, there've been new liaisons with different things, but there's never been something that's just happened right now with us. Never.
No. And it's hard to stay on track with all that's going on with Trump doing what he's doing, with some of our politicians doing what they're doing.
That is the thing, and that it does come down to that, because they affect us. They affect us. We are affected by what goes on politically. No matter if anybody says, I'm not interested in politics, you're still being affected by it, no matter what.
Yep. Well, let's hope the end of COVID is upon us and that the vaccines kick in and that...
Well, that's a whole other story, because the vaccines, people are talking about what the vaccine is, what is it going to do, etc. That's a whole other story. We could go into that one for a 2-hour little chat. I think we must have lunch, darling. That's what we'll do.
When COVID is over.
When COVID is over, absolutely. If you look back and you've made a mark.
Thanks.
Do you feel good about that? You should feel good about that.
I feel like, as you said, integrity plays a huge role. I feel that I've achieved a lot of things. That doesn't mean there are not a lot of things left to achieve. I'm driven. I don't believe in retirement. I love working. And
I so get that.
And you're a very special friend in my life, and let's hope we get to physically see each other one of these days.
Thank you so much for that. That also means a lot to me, because I've always, as I said, regarded you very highly. I've always respected your work and your work ethic. And I'm just so glad that you wanted to be on the show and come and talk to us and tell us these crazy stories. And you've had such a rich life, and you still, as you say, there's still so much more to do.
Do you think I talk a bit?
I'm glad you talk a bit. People must talk. People must tell us what's going on in their lives and stuff. We love to hear it, and especially this show is about that. This show is honestly about
your show, Cindy. Thank you so much.
I'm so happy. That's your forum, your thing. I know I interject and I get these ideas. Oh my God, I've got to ask about that, and I've got to ask about that. But you've just, you just let it go. You just set it free.
Can I just tell one more story before you go?
Please, I want another story. This is our coup de grace, and I am so thrilled. I just want to thank you again for being on the show. Thank you, everybody that's watching. Thank you, Discover TV, for giving me this platform. Suze, tell us a fabulous story, darling.
I'll tell you the story, because when Cindy asked me to be on the show, I thought I must write a few things down. She got 8 pages.
She did. She gave me 8 pages. I was like, okay, how do I sort of squash this down to like a 3-page sort of questionnaire?
Okay, we'll have to do this again.
We will do this again. I loved having you on the show. I mean it sincerely. I know everybody else also enjoyed it. And just here's to a great life and to non-retirement.
Thank you.
I'll be seeing you in those few years later. Maybe we'll end up somewhere one evening and laugh about this and say, look at us. I mean, I'm going to be some old tart by then, and you're going to be like, hey, darling, we're definitely not retiring yet. Oh, no way. And I'll be, okay, hold on, I've just got to get back on stage, and I'll be your substitute whenever you want me.
Tell you what, by then I'll be able to be your backup singer.
Then you'll be my backup singer. I'm going to hold you to that one, okay? Everybody heard it. On it. So if you want to watch the show again, go to YouTube or go to my Cindy Alter Live Entertainment Facebook page. And Suze, you can watch it anytime. Tell all your friends about it. This was such a fabulous interview. Mwah! Bless your heart.
I've loved watching your shows generally, and I loved being on it. Thanks, darling.
Yay!
Bye-bye.
It was fabulous. Bye, everybody. Good night.
Bye.
Lots of love.
Very well.